It's David Drake at Digital Innovators at Spotlight. Welcome. We're going to talk about new innovations today. I'm also a chemical engineer by trade, so I get really excited about the new product here because it has to do with chemistry and innovation for roads. We have Mr. Sean Kim, the manager of Caris from Korea, with us today. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm excited having you here, talking about the innovation. I get to learn a lot about different companies when I work with them. And, starting working with Caris got exciting because it's a simple solution. You have road dividers or roadblocks that are normally out of metal, and you're making them out of PVC with patented structure allowing cars and trucks, large ones, to hit the rail and reduce damage, reduce cost of creating it, easier to replace, doesn't corrode. In addition to that, even trucks can hit these things and not necessarily have a big accident, but rather bounce off. I've seen some of the videos, and it's quite impressive how these big trucks can hit it, sometimes at 20%, 28% angle at 50 to 60 miles an hour, and still not break through, and still not crash and get ruined. And it's quite impressive. Now, those are some of the solutions that you guys have solved. And please share more about it, with the problems that you guys have solved in your technology.
So, David, our main priority is the safety of the driver. And our goal right off the bat was to create a guardrail out of plastic that could be as effective, if not better, than the current steel guardrails that are out in the market today. And another feature that we added to this guardrail is to add a luminescent solution to it.
Oh, okay.
And this way, in nighttime, it not only helps the awareness of the driver of where the guardrails are located, but also guides them in certain roads where it may be harder to maneuver around.
That's right. You mentioned this to me before, and I saw images of these things in different colors as well. And as you drive in the night, you see that. And these things charge up during the day, even though it's cloudy?
Yes, sir. So as long as there is light, the guardrail is absorbing the light, and that way, in the nighttime, it uses that energy that it's gathered up and illuminates in the night to help drivers be more aware of their surroundings, I guess, and where the guardrail is.
What's the experience of the founder and the company having started?
So the founder, out of college, he was involved with a resin manufacturer for a long time, about 30 years, I believe. And during that time, he gained a lot of experience in how resins worked and how they were manufactured. So as he was driving one day, he noticed the galvanized steel guardrails that most of the world uses, if not all. And he realized that he could utilize his knowledge in synthetic resins to create a guardrail out of plastic that could compete with the steel guardrails that are in the market today.
And now he's been working on this for many years, well, several decades. It's been a long process. So how did that process roll out over the last few years?
So a lot of it was a lot of research and development, a lot of trial and error. He started this company in 2004, and throughout this time, basically, he's been just creating different versions, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. So at this point in time, we've passed multiple crash tests that make us eligible to enter into different markets around the world.
And I remember that you have done that in the US as well as in Korea, obviously, and Uzbekistan. And some of these crash tests that we were looking at, what are the speeds you're trying them at, and what angle you're trying them at?
So right now we've tried multiple different, mainly 40 kilometers per hour and 65 kilometers per hour. And we've done a wide range of tests that includes different types of vehicles as well, such as
Your truck, for instance,
truck and
commercial properties and cars.
as well as
But
sedans.
what's 40 kilometers an hour? I should know. I'm Swedish. I mean, in miles, that's what, 30 miles an hour?
About, yes.
Yeah, and then that 65 will be around 45 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But it has to be a certain angle, right? Because if it's
Yes.
too sharp, it's going to go right through.
Yeah, so those are the requirements that are set for these types of crash tests. I would say the angles that are required are based on the likelihood that in a real scenario that the car would collide with the guardrail.
Yeah, and I've seen them come really quick, and you're like, And then, there's not much damage to the patented, PVC rail that was created. And I'm like, wow, that's clever because everything else can have damage and dents.
Yeah, and that's our company's goal, is to create and make sure this guardrail really keeps the passenger safe. And with the different compounds that we've incorporated with our PVC resin, it's able to absorb the same, if not more, of an impact that steel guardrails can handle.
Oh, that's fascinating. I remember seeing a video where a truck at 8,000 kilos, which is like what,
Yeah, very big.
16,000 pounds, hitting the rail and then just kind of bouncing off and not crashing. And the coloring, I mean, that it lit at night, that didn't occur to me. I remember you told me before when we talked about carries, but that's brilliant because at night when I drive, my eyes get real tired really fast. My eyes get a little weaker now, and at nighttime it's very difficult for me to drive. I get really nervous. So having that light addendum to the road would be great, but it's going to take some time. We have to replace and get the contracts. It's going to take maybe 50 years, and even then, we're not going to replace the whole world or even a portion of the world.
Of course. And I think, even these days, as I'm driving, I notice that on the steel guardrails, there are reflective stickers that are placed to make the guardrails visible, but I don't think it compares to what our guardrail does. It's a matter of a rectangle that reflects it at night, or a whole couple kilometers of a PVC guardrail that is right in your face as you're driving.
I think that's great. I mean, that also touches on, some of the top three successes you've had with your company. And what would you say are the top three? I mean, I'm sure maybe you already mentioned them. Do you want to maybe put in your own words?
Yeah, so basically, I think our top three successes are the fact that we have a working product, a PVC resin that's able to withstand, as you saw through the videos, collisions from all types of different cars. And I think the second one is, like we've been talking about, the whole illuminating effect that our PVC guardrails are able to provide. And the third one is the fact that our guardrails are manufactured from recycled plastics. The chairman has always emphasized that he wants a company that's green, leaves the smallest footprint. And with guardrails and how much is produced annually, I mean, I can't even imagine how that affects, as far as the ecosystem goes. And he's very proud of the fact that one of his main focuses are to provide a product that does not create nearly as much waste.
Well, it sounds like you've been inspired by the chairman and the founder. And, for family offices that we work with globally, it's important that we also make investments in impacting the future, reducing waste. And I personally love recyclable waste and recyclable plastics because it's just going to grow with our, population. So it's a forever increasing demand, and you get paid to take the trash. That's great. And then you get paid for using it in this scenario. That's a win-win situation. So I can see the impact being interesting for family offices around the world and investors who say, hey, I want to care about the environment. The plastic that we have, we need to recycle it. And this is one way to do it. Of course, there are other ways of recycling, right? You can turn it into oil and gas and other ways of doing it, but the efficiency there hasn't gotten there yet. And I think by recycling it back to the rails, there's an endless roads that needs to be built to get an endless road without rail. Not to talk about the ones that have it. We're talking about the ones that don't have it. So I can see, wouldn't you need to create local factories for this then? So you can cover the region, because shipping would cost money and there's so much need in each region. Isn't that how it would work?
Yes, of course. And, that's one of our goals that we've set for ourselves as well. We plan to target globally, whatever country would be willing to adopt our PVC guardrail. Our main goal would be to set up a factory in a centralized location of our customers, the countries that want this PVC guardrail on their roads. And in that way, once we set up a factory, that factory would supply the surrounding countries.
Well, you have those contracts and your commitments, both from a couple of countries. I think Uzbekistan was one country who made some commitments. Please share what happened in Uzbekistan recently.
So Uzbekistan is a country that the chairman is very fond of. He's traveled there very many times in the recent year. He's cultivated lots of great relationships, and in that way, he was able to secure a supply contract of 100,000 kilometers with the Ministry of Transportation in Uzbekistan.
Mm.
Yeah, very exciting. And
100,000 kilometers?
100,000 kilometers,
Well,
yes.
okay, now how much is that in miles? I think it's 1.6. That'd be 70,000 miles.
Give or take, yes. around that.
7,000 miles. Okay, that's quite a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Probably
yeah.
take you like 5 to 10 years to produce that and
Of
implement
course.
that.
Of course. And, our main goal was to create that relationship and to secure the contract. And definitely we plan to keep the relationship going and making sure that we start rolling out these plastic guardrails to Uzbekistan. And in that way, surrounding countries would have an example that they could look at.
Right.
And in that way, they start adopting it as well. And that's our goal.
Now, tell me more about the challenges you've seen in the company over the last decade that's going to be difficult to overcome.
So definitely there's been a lot of challenges. The company isn't some huge firm with an abundant amount of resources. There's definitely been a lot of trials and errors. We've had to conduct multiple crash tests in which, some we passed, some we didn't. And when we didn't, we did it until we passed. And, and the fact that we're dealing with synthetic resins here, I mean, the mixture has to be just perfect in order for this guardrail to be able to withstand the force of these huge trucks and huge vans. And that was something that we had to overcome in the past years, just making sure that we were able to provide a product that worked and a product that can live up to everything that we say about it, as far as the illuminescence, being able to be recycled, being able to, most importantly, withstand the force of a big collision of a car going at a speed that, is hard to hold back from.
It's pretty impressive. I would think the implementation of being able to contract to replace existing infrastructure is going to not be the most likely way to go about this, but rather new roads or roads that lack it. So I guess former Russian states would be very interesting, as long as there's enough capital for it to be implemented. But I also know I'm learn more about the Korean culture. That it's very Christian, and how do you think Christianity and being religious in Korea affects and influences the culture of how you do business?
So the chairman is very religious. He practices Christianity along with millions of other Koreans, and he always verbalizes, his faith to us, even in the office. And I think that's really what got him through, all these trials, and because it gets hard, trying to develop a product that has never been developed before. There's definitely been times where if I were running the company, that who knows, I might have given up. But he's very, very strong in his faith, and he's not afraid to show it as well. Me going to church as well, I can relate to this, going to church every Sunday, it's a discipline, but also you're going because of your faith. And one thing that I can kind of relate to faith and this business, as far as the chairman goes, is that, he has the most faith in this product. He believed it, he brought it to fruition, and I believe that his faith
Inspires others.
Yes.
Yeah, and I see this inspiration for the team that he works with. And it's kind of nice to kind of highlight that in a company that, he's thinking about his team members and the people he hired and brought on board, and he's sharing his vision, but also that it's a bigger great for everybody, recycling, impactful, as well as new technology, lower cost, and solving overpopulation problems on a global basis. I mean, just recently in the news, we see how trash is being returned from countries. They don't want to accept it anymore. And recycling has to pick up. And, we got issues with plastics in the sea, with fish and dolphins and other animals getting caught up in it. And I've seen great innovation to remove that and remove it. But this one actually has a need on both sides, a tremendous need on both sides. And I enjoy seeing solutions like this, especially, as I said before, I'm a chemical engineer by training, and every time I see, PVC and chemicals, I get a little excited, like, finally I get to use my education and kind of understand what's going on, you know, because I'm like, oh wow, I studied chemistry. That wasn't very useful for me for a couple of decades. That's why I get a little, you know, excited. I mean, I try to get involved with the chemical angel network and, you know, pharma and medical equipment businesses too, to expand on this knowledge that I've had.
And I think that's a big selling point for our company as well. Not only are we trying to do what's best for the environment, but it drastically increases our margins as well. Using these recycled plastics, where we don't have to buy raw materials that are manufactured. Rather, we use plastics that have been recycled already. So, in that way, we hope to bring another benefit to this whole package of what we're offering, which is the PVC guardrail.
Yeah, we need all the help we can. On another note, the audience for, the solution here, who at government level, or who do you really approach when you talk about this?
So usually we target the Department of Transportation within each country that we approach, and so far we've had a great response. We haven't had too much trouble getting any feedback, response, or a meeting with anyone, and that's something that we're really excited about, because we see that not only do we see our vision, but we see that it interests people in these countries. And not only does it interest, for example, like Uzbekistan, we're able to bring something into fruition that really gives us incentive to grow and try harder and to expand.
So speaking of growing and expanding, where else in the world are you planning to grow over the next couple of years? I would think, just about any Department of Transportation would love a lower cost, more resilient, non-corroding technology solution that actually helps the environment, which is, four really good points. And, it actually lights up at night and different colors, which is kind of cool. Never thought about doing it in red versus yellow versus green, or, versus blue at night. And, okay, I guess you can do yellow or red when it's a really sharp turn, right? So lit up even more.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
And like the lights, like yellow, orange, red. So yellow, orange, red means green means okay, you're going straight, and then you change the colors when you make a curve. And that'd be a clever way of giving people the stop signs, right?
Yeah, you're giving us ideas that we haven't thought about. We
I'm
might have
sure
to
you
use
guys
that.
knew this already. I'm sure you guys already thought about this.
And so, yeah, I mean, like you said, we've had interest from Uzbekistan. We've been able to secure a contract with them. Our chairman, he doesn't really limit where he wants to expand. As any chairman, I would think his vision is really just global. Any country that's interested in utilizing our product, we are definitely interested as well into providing it for them. But like you mentioned earlier, there is a challenge of certain roads that already have the galvanized steel implemented, cost-wise, and not only cost-wise, but just the fact of having to replace the whole system. It's hard. Yeah, it's a challenge, and so like you were saying earlier, we definitely are targeting countries that are less developed, and in that way we could bring it in, set it up, and it's done.
Well, I mean, I think, Sean, you remember, I mean, to reiterate what you said, you're solving a problem. So when you're contacting the Department of Transportation, you're solving a problem that a lot of times had to do with cost. But also, I can see at re-election time, this is a great product to implement. Find some roads that haven't got a rail yet and say, hey, I want to get re-elected, and I'm going to do these things. I'm going to bring in this rail that has 4 major points. It lights at night because we have special paint, less corrosive. It's not corrosive at all, actually. And resilient, passed all the tests globally. You got patents on it. You're going into the U.S. and you're going to other markets, and you have a long list. And it's a simple value proposition to the Department of Transportation. Maybe you guys should track and try to go after cities and countries that come out for re-election. because it'll be part of the campaign commitment. I guess, and this must be a long sales cycle. How long is the sales cycle in your opinion?
So for example, the sales cycle for Uzbekistan was 1 year. So I mean, we definitely like to implement that, and hopefully with any other country that would like to work with us, we think that 1 year is a good time frame to get things done. And like you said, we have a lot of convincing to do, especially with countries that are looking to implement guardrail systems. We're bringing a whole new product to them, something that they've never seen before. So our goal right now is to implement as much as we can, get this out so that people can actually see it. And with that, we believe that people will be convinced and that they would hopefully prefer our guardrail over the traditional galvanized steel guardrail.
Well, look, here in the U.S., we heard about, 100,000 bridges or 1 million bridges that need repair. Maybe that's an opportunity where the repair can be done. I'm not sure, but there might be an attachment to that, because it's a magnificent, well, not magnificent, but a terrible challenge for infrastructure that the U.S. alone has.
So the chairman has lots of plans. With the synthetic resin that we use in the guardrail, he's produced sound barrier walls for high traffic highways and residential areas. It decreases, the sound. He's produced a lot of wall mechanisms, I guess you could say, for example, in construction zones where the ground may not be as settled. They're barrier walls to withstand landslides.
What are some of the growth opportunities that you see for the company? And obviously you have to open up your manufacturing plant, which you already made commitments to do in Uzbekistan, and you already found a plot of land to do so, and had a celebration, talked about how to, photos and a press release about it, which was very helpful. And, obviously that will take that's probably, 15-year contract, correct?
Mm-hmm.
For you to operate that and implement 100,000 kilometers of rail, and that's on the both sides, obviously, or maybe it's counted half of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, half.
That's obviously a big step, and going to need a lot of infrastructure capital to set up the factory and build it. And I can imagine thousands of these factories going up around the globe over the next 100 years, which means it's huge demand everywhere. I'm wondering if some of the finances could be coming from IMF, the World Bank, OPIC, which is a semi-governmental agency in the U.S. who will invest in certain directions for the government, like a loan. That could be another venue for capital incentives and help coming in. I worked with a couple of groups that do innovation solutions for small and medium-sized businesses. This ends up being a medium-sized business going to developing countries. So I think there's quite a few venues out there, and I'll gladly share that information with your group, because traditionally I think that you are currently a publicly listed company, correct? Yes. In Korea. Yep. And you've got over $100 million market cap, and there's tremendous volume on the company. Yes. So there is a following. There are people paying attention to it in your local market, and we've come a long way to do this already. But you're right, it takes time, because it's timing. You got to get the right partnerships. And you can't. I don't think the right way is to go to replace the rail. I think the way to go is to implement new rail.
We agree.
Because there's demand and there's accidents. There's actually a bridge from Saudi to Bahrain. That could be a great project. When I drove by there last time, maybe a decade, only one bridge. The bridge had rail, and then it had a fence, but the fence would go out in an angle, maybe 25 feet each direction. And I asked the Bahraini, well, why is the fence so weird? He said, well, sometimes we have accidents and people drive off the bridge through the rail. And there's only one bridge. So, that could be another way to get attention to the company. Go after, infrastructures and bridges that are well known, have had situations like this. Maybe you create a second rail, maybe your rail is on top of it, and get you exposure on a global basis. I think that's a clever way to create a narrative of how you are saving, improving, and assisting infrastructure to be better kept, maintained, and supported. What do you think about that?
Of course, and we're always trying to expand our product range, and in this way we can cater to different scenarios. There's always 4-lane roads. There's four-way intersections, and the possibilities are endless. The great thing about this material is that as long as we get the mold, we could pretty much make anything out of it, as long as it passes the necessary testing and requirements in order required of us to implement into these public roadways. The chairman has many ideas that I think a lot of people would be excited about coming in the near future.
Well, you know what? I would think that high-profile events could be another one. Let's say, what do they do at the Monaco Grand Prix? What do they do then in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix? Maybe there's a way to get the brand exposed to those big events in a certain way. Maybe there's a Grand Prix or competition at night. I mean, one of my directors and friends, he has a hobby. He drives for 30 days. So he recently drove from Beijing to Paris.
Wow.
And he does it with his spouse, and he likes it. And maybe there's a way to, maybe the bumper becomes part of this material, and at night lights up. I mean, there's some clever ways to create a narrative that's a little different, and it gives a lot of exposure to the brand. I like to play around with ideas and how to get things, look a little different and catch people's attention.
It's sounding like with all your ideas, you need to get involved.
No, yes. Well, I'm already involved for sure. That's why, and that's why I'm happy to have you here and talk about this in length. Well, to say lasting words to the audience, what should they take away from our conversation today? Give me 3 things they should take away from this conversation we had today.
I think 3 things that people should take from this interview are: 1, we're providing a product that gives many solutions that the current steel guardrail doesn't have. For one, it illuminates at night. It increases visibility for drivers, keeps the driver safe and aware of where the guardrails are. Number 2, our company strives to be a company that cares about the environment, which is why we emphasize the fact that we use recyclable plastics in producing our guardrails. And number 3, I think people should take away from this interview is that, we are a company that is trying to change the mold here. With this PVC resin, we believe that it is a great substitute to a lot of materials that are used today in many different things, not only guardrails. And, we hope to introduce these products. And before we do, we hope that people have an understanding of what we're trying to do and exactly the problems that we're trying to solve.
Well, I'll tell you what, I agree with you, Sean, and the impact of this is the more you grow, the more plastic you recycle. So in my mind, there's at least 6 value-added points that are phenomenal with this business. And it was hard for me in the beginning to pinpoint what it was. And I felt instantly, wow, I know there's more to it than what I just see here. I just felt it. And from this interview, I now got it. There's at least 6 points here that are, changing the future. Because the more you grow, the more recycled plastic we're using. And that's a beautiful business.
Of course.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Well, thank you very much for joining the show.
Thank you.
My name is David Drake. Thank you for joining us here at Spotlight Innovators.